commercial, we have retail, we have job opportunities, basically the developmental hub. What's happening is Mississauga has done a fantastic job with how they've done certain things, and it's time that our cities are finally catching up to that.
Why? What did Mississauga do?
Mississauga has a great infrastructure in place related to commercial, related to retail, related to jobs. Their city is thriving. And what has happened is the other cities are still catching up. So Brampton is still yet to come into place. They're trying to do their own sort of development. So Vaughan is also getting right into that. They have a big downtown hub. What we like to call it is a new downtown of each suburban city. That's what we call it.
And you know, with all the hype about these condos and people jumping in, we've seen the average price of a condo in Vaughan jump over the last even 6 months, and that has to do, of course, with the subway. But if you drive down Highway 7, you're going to see all these buildings popping up. But at the same time, we've heard some horror stories about buildings being canceled or projects being canceled.
That's right.
What about that? We've had a lot of irate callers in asking about, you know, what's happening with these developers, and especially when you hear developers canceling projects and then announcing plans for massive projects down the street.
So coming back to that, I mean, I know Vaughan had two notorious developments that got cancelled. And the reason for that was the builders touted financial reasons and on constructions. So if we were to speak about one project particularly, it was all over the news. Basically, this was called the restrictive covenant on the piece of land. Now, it was there in the agreement. A lot of lawyers overlooked it. And what happens is this: when you have a strong demand for a product, and I was having a discussion with a lawyer about this as well, and then he was giving a presentation in our office, and he says, look, here's the thing. You have a big lineup, you're having affordable units, everybody's going crazy trying to get a piece of the property, everybody just wants to get in. What we forget to look at is what is the reputation of the developer, what is the reputation, and what have they built so far. So what eventually started happening was they bought at certain price points, and in the last 2 years from them buying, we had a huge jump because they bought around $500, $600 per square foot. And then when the new projects came out, the new projects were at $800, $900 per square foot. Look at how much money was on the table, right? That's from an investment per point of view. Let's look at the people who actually were buying so they can eventually live in those units. And I know some people who bought in that building, and unfortunately they said, you know what, we were going to move in with our families. They bought really good, nice penthouses for the price, but they're like, now at this point, we can't even afford it because those same units that they bought around $500,000, $600,000, they're around $800,000.
And there's no recourse for those people.
There's no recourse, and it's sad to say, but unfortunately, the development agreements are always one-sided. Okay, and even a lawyer will say, look, we can go through the agreement with you. We're going to tell you what you need to be careful of. We can show you the clauses. We can request that these clauses or these certain points be taken out. But ultimately, when a development is hot and the builder has more buyers on the table, they're going to say no to everything. And I've seen them. And I've seen them say no. Whether you want it, you have to abide by our terms. And if you don't want it, well, we have another buyer ready to go.
So I guess as a buyer, it has to do with your risk tolerance. Am I willing to take this chance? Because really, I'm going in with very few safeguards.
It really is. And when you look at resale, at least you know that the building's already there. And with condo developments, it kind of gets blown out of proportion because if you look at the number of developments going on within the GTA right now, how many actually get canceled? And it's those few that give everyone else a bad name. You know, trust your realtor, and we'll tell you what we think of certain developers. It's not guaranteed for sure, but we've done our homework. We've dealt with a lot of developers, and like Ron said, you have to know the reputation of the builder before you go into these, because you don't know what you're getting yourself into otherwise.
Asif, to add on to exactly what you said, so when we come down to buying of the development, okay, so you made a great point that you have to know the reputation of the developer. What makes a good development in the first place? You have location, you have transportation, and you have area amenities. And then all the incentives, then all the other things come into big factor. And of course, the biggest thing that customers should always look at is the price point as well. For a reputation of developer, it's not just, hey, they have a fantastic name. What have they built so far? What is currently standing right now? Now, what I did is, I did a quick search. I said, what are the canceled projects? Our canceled projects, look, based on the amount of projects in the GTA right now, in 2018, we had about 10 to 12 canceled projects all in all, okay? I think the numbers that came out was about 4,000 or 5,000 suites that were canceled. Don't quote me on that number,
Yeah.
something on that. Then this year so far, we've had 2 cancellations or 3 cancellations. Now what I did is I said, let me look at the developer. And out of those cancellations that took place, there was only maybe 2 developers that already had something that they were working on and they're doing. But the other developers I looked at, I said, man, I've never heard of these guys before. So as a consumer perspective, you should really buy with caution to make sure that, you know what, am I getting myself into the right thing? And is this going to go ahead? So a couple of questions I always recommend my clients. I say, look, if you're buying a pre-construction condo, let me find out for you. I asked the builder, I said, do you have permits in place? Because a lot of times they don't have permits in place. And sometimes they have permits in place. You have really good developers that come into place. There's a new project coming out in Yorkville. They said, hey, we're not going to launch till we have actual application, we have city approval, everything in place, and then we're going to start selling. Even from a development perspective, they should start construction after the first year of going into sales. Otherwise, they start losing money and they have to lock in their trades. That's from a development perspective, right? And sometimes the financial reasons they also tout, because guess what happens? And that's what happened with Cosmos condos. They touted financial reasons because they felt they didn't sell high enough. And by the time they got into construction and everything like that, the pricing had gone up so high that they were actually losing money on the project from what I heard around, you know, the table talk. So that was one of those reasons.
There's so many different factors to
Yeah.
consider as well when you're
course.
buying in. And the main thing is, when you're buying pre-construction, you're entering into an investment almost as a partnership with that builder. So it is buyer beware, but ask the right questions. Ask your realtor for advice.